Hey guys, it's Buddha Gem, and we're going to continue this series on democracy. Seems like lots of other folks on YouTube are discussing this topic, and I do think it's an important thing to discuss. In my last video, I asked you a very simple question. Got democracy? And I hope you really thought about it. Now, from the looks of many of the comments I've gotten, most of you can't think of democracy outside of voting. And so I'm again going to ask you to think about what democracy really is. What is the essence of it? And again, I will quote from the Trilateral Commission report and discussing the manifestations of the democratic surge. The democratic surge manifested itself in an almost endless variety of ways. Consider, for instance, simply a few examples of the surge in terms of the two democratic norms of participation and equality. Voting participation, which had increased during the 1940s and 1950s, declined during the 1960s, reaching a lows of 55.6% in the 1972 presidential election and even a lower 38% in the 1974 midterm election. However, almost all other forms of political participation saw a significant increase during the 1950s and continuing into the 1960s. A marked upswing in other forms of citizen participation in the form of marches, demonstrations, protest movements, and cause organizations. So what's democracy look like in your life? Is it just voting? Is it just going to the ballot box and picking Coke or Pepsi? Or is it something more? Is it expressed through the organizations you belong to? Is it expressed through your social relationships? I'm sure that most of you don't have a dictator friend who decides what movies you're going to watch and what parties you'll go to and what social things you will do. I'm guessing most of you employ some kind of democracy in those decisions. In fact, in most of your life, at least where you can, you interject as much democracy as you can. That is, we often want to have our opinions and our say in matters that affect us. But there's one area where it's really lacking, isn't there? Our job. Not very democratic, is it? Boss doesn't usually take a vote when he decides to lay somebody off. Doesn't usually ask other employees. It's very arbitrary. In my life, and maybe most of yours, the real fear is not a tyranny of a majority, but the tyranny of a minority. A boss who can arbitrarily tell me what to do, how to do it, when to do it, how fast to do it. But unlike many of you, I have some say in that because I belong to a union. And in fact, I would argue that unions are among the most democratic institutions in our society. Now, not all unions are as democratic as they should be. I'll be the first to admit that. But there are no unions that are completely free of democracy. And at the local level, unions are very democratic. Moreover, on the job, that exercising of democracy, belonging to that union, empowers me so that when issues of safety arise, I feel confident that I can speak out and that my other union members will join me in saying, hey, that's not safe. And this is bore out by statistics. Union jobs are statistically safer than non-union jobs, and for good reason. Democracy undermines authority. We're not as fearful of the boss as undemocratic non-union workers. This isn't a magic potion. It's something that democracy does when you practice it. So again, let me turn to the Trilateral Commission report on some of the other effects of democracy. As I mentioned, not only was there a decline in the confidence of the public in political leaders, but there was also a marked decline in the confidence of political leaders in themselves. In part, this was the result of what were perceived to be significant policy failures. In addition, and probably more importantly, political leaders also had doubts about the morality of their rule. They too shared in the democratic, participatory, and egalitarian ethos of the times, and hence had questions about the legitimacy of hierarchy,
coercion, discipline, secrecy, and deception, all of which are in some measure inescapable attributes of the process of government.
Democracy is not reformist. It is revolutionary. It not only gets the ruled to question authority, it gets the rulers to question their authority. It is revolutionary because it gets us to see beyond what is considered the norms in a democratic society, that is voting for Coke or Pepsi, and gets us to participate in new and imaginative ways to exercise our power, our vision, and our dreams. Not in some abstract, theoretical way, but in a concrete and beautiful way. Democracy is revolutionary. Try it out sometime.